Okay, so we are discussing the article on the real immigration crisis. The problem is not too many, but too few. So I would say that the article challenged some myths about immigration and why countries oppose it. So some of these include competition over jobs, fear of security or safety, slow assimilation. However, from a more global perspective, a major problem is the aging population, especially in Europe and North America. Um, so the studies have shown that the populations are okay, so the aging population is growing, and also people are having fewer and fewer children. So this could have negative effects on the economy, and also misconceptions about immigration. So either coming, let's say, to the United States or leaving native homelands for economic opportunities, political refugee, and other reasons. So Camille, you want to talk about the next section?
Yes, so the next section is basically called Help Wanted. And basically, what they're talking about in this section is that immigration to the Western world and basically to more developed countries as a whole is decreasing drastically. And there are a couple reasons for this. So, this is a direct quote from the text. They said that one reason for the faltering supply of immigrants is that people are getting richer. So basically, the economies in developing countries are improving because a large population of younger people are working there. And so that's how the economies are flourishing. And so that means that if the economies are flourishing, people are more inclined to stay where they are. Um, and they also talked about basically how um, this is a problem in general and just like in the text as a whole because people in the developed world they are aging at a rapid rate and basically the population is not sustaining itself, so we are not like replenishing the population quick enough so that people can work. So the majority of the population is retired and they can't work, and they're like draining welfare resources drastically. So yeah, Linda, did you want to talk about the third part?
Yes, thank you, Camille. Edge, and I think this part is a kind of the writer showing some examples about immigration, about some steps done or procedures for immigration done elsewhere that can be done in developed countries and the US, so to avoid the issue of the aging population. Like, for example, first he spoke about Japan, where the population is already reached a quarter of the population is already 65. But they already started to launch schemes to recruit more immigrants. Also in the Western countries, they were looking at the Middle East's population, Middle East immigrants, where 20% of them are foreign born. Also in the Gulf countries, where companies are recruiting, there are agencies specialized for recruiting immigrants that come to the Middle East and work there. And here the author suggests that we don't need to copy it as is. We can make some reforms and adjust it So it does work for the United States and Europe, like offering workers more protection, also helping workers to provide workers with more additional training, and helping also, as the cultural and the family ties are very important to immigrants. So making offering visas to the families is helpful, that so that the immigrants accept to stay for a longer time, so that they will be more effective for the economy of the country they are in. Also, another example is to boost a number of immigrants, to increase their economic, to do like some governments are doing, boosting immigrants to increase their economic impact. They also gave the example of the United States giving the visa lottery programs. And he suggested that Washington should expand this program and even give awards or points to immigrants from underrepresented countries. Also, to boost high skilled immigration, government should give should recognize the diplomas. Like, for example, the bachelor taken in Algeria, for example, should be recognized elsewhere. I'm going to give you an example. Like in Algeria, for example, despite the fact that the education is mostly 100% copied from the French education, and most of the educated people speak very well French, but when they go to France, their diplomas are not recognized. They have to study like several more years in order to accept their diplomas, and then they can further their education. So here it is offered. Governments should recognize foreign diplomas, and also they can work on training people abroad in specific skills. I think that's it. Next.
Excellent. Alejandro, did you want to share a little bit about nativism and maybe some of your experience with immigration in Chile?
Yeah, thank you. Well, this last section is it's more like a light-hearted part, because it talks about three major points, and those are the the work that people has in a country, right? Work in general. How governments and how immigrants go to a country, and how people look look foreigners, and what else? And how the population is aging, and because of that, foreigners are immigrants are boosting the economy, right? Raising the economy. So, this section didn't have so much examples, sorry, but it did give the example of China, for example. It said that, because of China, the politics of China, they are falling behind, and the country is aging. They don't have many immigrants, and yeah, they're falling behind basically. And also talks about how when there's so much immigrants in a certain part of the country, the population there doesn't discriminate anyone, or at least it's not that much, right? It also depends on the government that it's on a country at the moment. And what else? Well, and because of the aging society, well, some people fear that their jobs may be taken from them, and that's it. And from my perspective here in Chile, well, at least it's not that well, that happy thing that here people still discriminate immigrants. They still treat them badly. They do not like them at all. I think that Chile is one of the most racist and most xenophobic countries here, sadly. And time hasn't changed that at all. And yeah, that's yeah, that's it.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Another big like takeaway that I took from this, and I think that everything you said, Alejandro, was like spot on, was that like the aging population, they have views that are basically like obsolete, like which basically means that those views are old and they're like not necessarily right or necessarily like applied to society today. So their negative views, you know, against immigrants and against immigration, you know, are not necessarily applicable, like I said, to today's society. And like a direct quote from the text, which I kind of like thought was cool. They said that rather than pandering to the nativism of an aging minority, because again, like that population, I mean, those people, they get old and then, you know, unfortunately they die, but it's that population is shrinking. Politicians in Europe and North America should think seriously about how to preserve the economic vitality of the West, because as we have all discussed, immigration is imperative for economic flourishing, yeah, in the whole world in general. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, but
So
I have
I
a
think
question. Now we are seeing all the governments, and as Alejandro has pointed out, we are becoming more and more racist, and the government is helping that and is almost everywhere, not just here. So how can we how can we I mean, how can we attract people to go elsewhere if elsewhere is not safe? I am not safe in my country, then I go to a place where I am safe. But if I go to another place and it is not safe, so what's the point?
Yeah, that's definitely like a valid question because you know, there are like politicians and, you know, people who are out there who, you know, openly express their discriminatory racist views. And, you know, like you said, somebody from another country, you know, for example, the US Mexican immigration, you know, the US has made it very difficult for Native Mexicans to cross the border. And actually, and even in this article, it said that immigration from Mexico to the United States is actually declining. And a big reason for that is because, you know, people are so racist against, you know, the poor Mexicans that they don't want to come here anymore, because it's like they don't want to come here and face like such a difficult life, because unfortunately, you know, the majority makes life very difficult for them. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer, honestly.
well, I think that immigrants that are willing to sacrifice their lives for opportunity or a better life. For example, drawing on my own experience, my parents, they came from a very low income family where we lived in central Vietnam in a small village called Hue. So my parents are 60. They were born in 1961. So when they were 19, 20 years old in 1981, they sacrificed everything. They had no money. They didn't speak the language. And there's a lot of political problems. Communism, at the end of the Vietnam War, communism prevailed over democracy of the South, which was where my family was from. And um, I would like to think that most people are nonviolent, right? When we think about more like political conflicts or even in history, I think the most interesting part of this article was that the problem is not too many but too few, right? The United States, there would be no United States without immigrants, right? When we actually think about at the very basic level, we're all human beings. So the fact that people, let's say the former US President Donald Trump, the article starts with "Our country is full." Um, the country would be absolutely nothing if it weren't for cultural diversity and the immigration from all over the world. So it's not just, the United States-Mexico border, or even when we think of kind of going back in history with like Ellis Island, or when you think of a place like South Florida or New York, these are the areas where it's a true melting pot of cultures. And I think so many people, unfortunately, there are like racist views. But this article really points out how this is dangerous, not just for the economy, because of course there's that trend where our population is declining. People are having less children. At the same time, people are living longer. So you could see how that could be a problem more so, maybe not in our lifetimes, like it sure is, but let's say projected, like when we think of the next like 50 or 100 years. So I think we all have like um, valid points, and this is something that could be like a very personal issue or like a very also like a controversial topic. So I think to change our attitudes on immigration, we need to be more open-minded to other people and realize that at the end of the day, like it's proven like we all like came from Africa, and even before actual human civilization, we were like actually like Pangea, then we all like broke off. So that's just kind of like, I don't know if that's a little too philosophical, but that's just my perspective, as someone who teaches world history and someone who's really like caring and compassionate about like other people, even though we may not look the same. Like Alejandro, you're from Chile. Linda, I know you're from Algeria. Camille, where like everyone has lineage. Like, where's your family from? People really like kind of like pass off like, where did we really like start?
Yeah, my mom is like her family is from Italy, but she was born in New York. And then my dad is actually, and people are always shocked by this, but my whole like dad's side of the family is Jamaican. And so I have cousins, which is really cool, who are Chinese Jamaican and like Black Jamaicans and everything. And obviously, like my skin is super, super pale. But yeah, it's very hard, like going off of what you were saying, it's so hard because there are some people who are so ignorant that they just refuse to like, they refuse to accept, they refuse to like appreciate other cultures and other people from around the world. So I think like going forward and as teachers, or as current teachers, and for me, I've never been a teacher, so as a future teacher, it's super important like in our classrooms that we teach about cultural diversity and acceptance and everything, because we have to like stray away. We have to prepare the future generations to work in a world that is globally connected and, stray away from all this hate and all this unnecessary violence and everything, because honestly, like it's unnecessary. It's not getting anyone anywhere, and it's only hurting people in the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. So, like in the broadcast, also, what her name, Sabrina, I can't pronounce her name. She was talking about the population was shrinking first because before teenagers used to have kids. Now you cannot. Are you gonna ask teenagers to have kids? No. women are more interested in having a career and succeed in life. So even if they want to be moms, they prefer to have 1 or 2 kids, no more. So to be able to work and have a family at the same time. But as you said, I'm gonna say, yes, they are ignorant. People are ignorant about this reality, and these people who are in need to understand that we need more immigrants everywhere, whether in Europe or in the US, or but we need to work on ourselves, on the acceptance, on the welcoming of people. Like, for example, I am more I was more informed about the immigration in Europe, and especially in France, because my country is very close to France. Even historically, we were colonized by France. So the first thing that they did is that the immigrants, they built special neighborhoods for them, whether from North Africa or from Western African, or all the Africans they come. They have special neighborhoods. They don't benefit from schools and good education for their kids. So the French live in a region, and the immigrants in a region, and then they say, oh, they did not try to integrate. No, this is not the way to integrate. If you start like this, building neighborhoods for immigrants and special schools just for immigrants or for African Americans, like the US here, this is how the problems start. They should live where everybody's living. They should have the opportunity to integrate in the community. And if they work hard and they have money and they want to live in a good neighborhood, they can live in a neighborhood. You cannot say, oh, he is an immigrant or she is an immigrant. So this is my idea.
May I add something? I actually wanted to talk about something that Linda said earlier, that I think it's a really big issue that we have to abolish, and is that immigrants do not feel welcome in our countries, right? So the government doesn't do anything at all. They do not speak the language, they do not have jobs, they do not have anything at all, and the government does nothing about it. And I think that's something that we have to change somehow in some time. It probably will take time, but I think that's one big issue that we have to take down so we can evolve as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And like going back to the podcast that Linda you were talking about, a big thing is that we see as, you know, women who are in the developed world, they have, you know, more access to birth control and everything like that. But, you know, these underdeveloped countries are becoming more developed because of technological advancements that are, you know, being brought over from the process of globalization. And like women in these underdeveloped countries are luckily getting more access to birth control because it is like a big problem. You know, many of these women have 7, 8 children, and you know it's too much, and they even agree with it, but it's just, you know, so it's like a good thing. But yeah, I kind of wanted to talk another thing about we were talking about like how COVID has kind of affected like the working population. Diana, I know we kind of touched upon it, but basically like how people, now that like the pandemic is ending, people don't really want to work. And so, yeah, I don't know if you want to like elaborate on that a little bit, Diana.
Definitely. So I think we can all agree from a global perspective that no one could have anticipated the weight of the pandemic economically. I think Linda, okay, we're back in the meeting. Economically, socially, the article mentions that Alejandro, you mentioned that like even if you want to like work and let's say I let's say I immigrated from, I'll just use a hypothetical example. Let's say I immigrated from Venezuela to Miami, Florida. And I had no, obviously I had no job, limited education, right? Because that usually goes hand in hand. And also the ability to not natively speak English, to read and write. Everyone, all of the workforce, like what job can you realistically do where you don't have to read or write in some sort of capacity or speak? So the article said that among low skilled workers, this is a well-known phenomenon that immigrants are already a vital part of the US labor force, but filling positions that native workers can't or won't. So let's say we all head to our local restaurant. How many signs do we see of help wanted, right? Help is wanted. There is an actual need or demand for work, but the people that are able-bodied, healthy enough to work, they don't work because the government system is broken. You make more money sitting at home doing nothing and filling out an unemployment application than, let's say, working at McDonald's. You know, there's nothing wrong with these jobs. Like everyone starts somewhere, but the fact that we have so much hatred and like, oh, I'm not gonna be a janitor. I'm gonna pay someone else to do that. Yet these people are being paid like $10 an hour. And at the same time, like Camille said, it's like it's a major problem because why is there so much anti-immigration sentiment when maybe we should look at ourselves? Like maybe we're the problem because we absolutely kind of are. I'm not speaking for everyone, but there is like there's always been that problem where there are people that want to work and you say no, you're not welcome in this country, you're going to take all of our jobs. And then now it's like, oh, it's a global issue everywhere in every country, Europe, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, every corner of the earth. The fact of the matter is that we're aging. There's always going to be a demand for labor, but the question is, are we willing to, do it?
Yeah, definitely. Sitting at home and collecting unemployment checks when, let's say, you're like a 22-year-old man or a woman who is more than capable of getting off your butt and going to work every day, is a major problem. And it especially affects people who, work super hard, and, don't get those benefits. Like, for instance, my mother is partially handicapped. She's going to be 64 this Saturday. She works her butt off. She literally works like 70, 80 hours a week, not even joking, because she has like a corporate job. And I know somebody who is 23 years old, and he's more than capable of working, and he sits at home every day and just collects the unemployment checks. And it honestly infuriates me because like seeing especially like how hard my mother is working and everything else, and just knowing that somebody can kind of just do that to the system, it does make me very upset.
Yeah, I understand that, Camille. And this brings us to a very important point in the article, or we read about it even in the previous article also, is the fact that when people are aged, they need two things. They need medication and they need people to take care of them. And these people need to be young. So when 100% of the population is aged, who's going to take care of it, of who? So this is a very important point. So that's why when immigrants come, the kids of the immigrants grow up and they are educated and they gain skills. And so when people are aged, they will find people to take care of them. So this is the point. It's not just like, okay, we are going to be aged, we need we need people to live with us. No, this is not the point. It's, we are talking like caring of old people, we are talking about economy, we are talking about social life. different aspects matter here.
Yeah, I think, you know, I guess like the bright spot is that like the younger generation, I would say, like me, I'm now in my late 20s. So like at least like now I would say, or even like people like the baby boomer generation. So maybe people like in their like mid 40s, 50s, or 60s, like at least we're becoming more open-minded, right? So like when, for example, um, when you look at people, um, let's say they actually need welfare, like let's say someone who actually got COVID, or you're the primary caretaker of someone who's disabled or very elderly, you can't work, like, so the government is there to help us. But imagine how much good the government could do if we actually welcomed immigration, like in a legal process, but also had policies that actually help people like assimilate or not feel so excluded, or basically like, how can you really live off of making like $8 an hour working full time, right? 40 hours a week, and basically for the whole year. For example, like my parents, we own a nail salon. So like my mom's first job was a butcher, and my dad was a fisherman, right? My dad actually taught himself how to read and write, but this doesn't happen overnight. Or as like my siblings and I were lucky to have like public education, or things like free or reduced lunch, or even like the basic needs like housing or food. Like there are like greater issues when it comes to immigration, but it's hard to come up with just like one clear solution, because the people who are making these government decisions, they're often wealthy. They're looking out for their own interests. And I think the article made a good point about distinguishing between like Western rich, it says rich a lot, industrialized, developed, versus like the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think we've mentioned a few of these like points where there's like limited technology. It also even mentioned like how there could be like basically like robots or artificial intelligence. Like, when we like discount the actual like value of human beings and labor, and even more than that, I think that's when real change would start. But yeah, I'm optimistic, but I know that this is just like a problem throughout history, throughout our lives. It's going to continue to be, but we just have to like work towards like addressing it. So
Even with the robots and everything, I mean, it is like a cool thing to think about because, as technology advances, we see more and more like, the workforce using more and more robots or artificial intelligence or whatever, but you still need people to like man the robots. For instance, like robots are used in factories, but God forbid something happened, you need a person to make sure that everything is like running smoothly and everything like that. And like as we mentioned, if people want to sit at home on their butts and do nothing, and there are people from other countries, immigrants who want to come to the United States and work these jobs, then like who are we to stop them? Just, and in general, just who are we to stop them? Like especially if they want to provide better opportunities for their families. I think we all have come from like like immigrant families. I know like my dad immigrated to the US from Jamaica in the 70s, my whole dad's family, because there was a lot of political and economic unrest and it just wasn't good. But yeah, like we come here for opportunity, and it's just the stigmas and the negative stigma and everything behind it is just, it's very sad. And I really hope in the future we can work towards changing, people's mindsets for the better.
Yeah, the article talking about that too, that young people have like are more open-minded than old people are. And yeah, I want to be optimistic too, that in the future we are going to surpass this problem. And yeah, I really want to believe that.
yeah, I think we all do. On the other hand, I think there are people who are just so um, focused on like the status quo, right? So it's like they dwell on like the negative, like you know, because like kind of like playing the role of devil's advocate, there should be like I should say, there are legal processes for someone to immigrate, right? It's not just like, oh, let me like swim across the ocean and make it to land, and then I won't be like detained or sent back, deported, or even ICE. That's like a major issue that happened, or I would say like in recent news, like even with the Dream Act with um, high school or college age children who are born in the United States, but their parents are undocumented, and like how can you imagine how your life would be if like you're like, oh, go back to your country, and you're like, I have no connection to it, or like, what am I gonna do there? It's like, what do you do, right? So yeah. Does anyone else have any final points about any issue or thoughts?
Let's make our final point optimistic, like we all are in the education sector. So let's hope that we are working for global perspective, global education. So when this generation is gonna be taught well and taught about all the global issues, all the global matters, and if we include truly and properly global education, so I think things will change and people will see the things differently, um, and just being hopeful and optimistic.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for an awesome discussion. I think we definitely put our brains together and talked about some really great points.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro, for being here. This is great having you.
Yeah, special thank you to Alejandro. We really appreciate it. And it's always nice to hear from someone, you know, from another country, like even Alejandro, like hearing the American perspective. Like there's a lot of things you could read on the news, but you know, just like how is it really, you know?
Yeah, but I think that I didn't say any examples, like very specific examples here in Chile. I think that that thing was, well, the thing that was not in the debate, right? I wanted to say something, but I kind of forgot about it. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Well, good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.